taste. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate the movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, Sarah Feliciano.
Hello.
Hello. Not much. It's a pleasure to have you on. Sarah is a great comedic performer, one of my favorites to have on our show, Power Selling, that I co-run with her brother. I'm so sad. I saw your post that you did from your character that you had this past week. I'm so sad I missed being a part of that live.
It was a really, I feel super proud of, I don't know, I feel like I was okay, I'm always on that show and I'm always I don't know, I don't do improv ever. And last time I was I wish more people saw that because that was my peak. I'm proud to say that.
Yeah, for the at-home audience who has not seen that episode of Power Selling yet, go watch. It's all on YouTube, by the way. You can go watch every Power Selling episode on YouTube. But Sarah's character was somebody from the corporation who's monetizing pride, basically.
Yeah, corporation, the man who profits off pride.
It's fucking genius. So go watch that on the Power Selling Sala Learning Annex YouTube channel. And you can also go, by the way, there's a new podcast that you have out with other friend of the Power Selling coming out soon.
Armenta, we do this podcast called Oughts to Be Queer, and we take 2000s comedy movies that fucking suck, basically, and we just make arbitrary arguments for why, everyone in it is queer.
It's a big, there's a lot of really shitty movies that you can pull from, so that podcast has got tons of mileage ahead of it.
Definitely.
Yeah, I just did the episode I was talking about recording yesterday, which if you're already listened to this episode, I hope. If you haven't, go back and listen to it. It's the Geostorm episode with Ian Hebert, and Ian's standpoint, he loves disaster movies, and he thinks that there should be a gay disaster movie.
Yes.
Because there's not enough in the world of gay cinema that's like a peril action movie of any kind.
Yeah, all gay cinema is depressing, and only barely recently are we getting more happy just comedies and stuff like that. And yeah, I would love to see genres just, I'm okay with movies marketing them as this is the queer movie if they're not a depressing two straight people playing queer and one of them dies at the end. So there should absolutely be a disaster movie. There should be superhero, queer superheroes.
Yes. Well, hopefully we can get to that point someday. I feel like it'll help. It'll lift cinema up and make everything a lot more fun instead of some of this weird dour bullshit that we wind up seeing a lot of. And actually, and this is a great transition. And speaking of sort of dour bullshit, the movie you chose to talk about with me today is mid90s.
Fucking hate this movie.
It's a 2018 coming-of-age comedy drama written and directed by Jonah Hill in his directorial debut. Follows a 13-year-old boy who spends time with an older group of skateboarders living in 1990s Los Angeles. What's your grand overarching thesis about this movie? Why you hate this movie so much?
Well, first off, it was I had to go through a lot of effort to finish this movie. As far as when it first came out, there was a fist fight in the middle of this viewing I went to go see. So I had to go back to see it a month later, and I was that was not worth seeing it basically twice and waiting to see it. And I had also been seeing all these advertisements for it and video essays that were mid-90s is not just nostalgia porn. And so I was like, oh, thank God, you know? And there were all these movies like coming of age directorial debuts that had happened like in 2018, specifically like Lady Bird and Eighth Grade and then mid-90s. So I was like, you know what? I'm like, this is a genre on its own, like famous rich people like getting just like a budget to make coming of age movies.
Yes.
And so I was like, I was really excited for this one and I was expecting more. And I just think that it absolutely is nostalgia porn. And I feel like it's like Jonah Hill being like, you know, like, I don't know if it was like Jonah Hill trying to be like, I'm cool, or like, I remember how cool the 90s were. And I have all this money to buy all these songs, for, like, to get all the rights to these songs for this. And that it just became like, I feel like it's just a Harmony Korine movie that's not a Harmony Korine movie.
Right. And it's got Harmony Korine showing up in a cameo. That's how Harmony Korine-ish it kind of becomes.
Definitely.
Yeah, I was watching this. Hold on, before we get too deep into it, I want to hear about the fist fight that happened at the screening of this. Where were you? Where did you watch it where a fist fight broke out?
So I used to work at an ArcLight, and I went to to ArcLight Hollywood, the Dome, to go watch I don't know if it wasn't in the Dome, but it was at ArcLight Hollywood, and like, I don't know, it was all like teenagers and people who were super drunk in the screening, and like the first, like, the guy, like, there's greeters at ArcLight, so this guy does his greet. And I hear somebody in the back being like, that was the gayest fucking thing I've ever heard. And I was like, oh, great. Like, I hope this person isn't super loud throughout the entire movie. And I was also just like super thrown off by that because I hadn't heard somebody for like a while use gay as like a negative thing.
Right.
I felt like I was in the mid-90s again. But no. And so this person behind us just didn't stop like talking the whole movie, was like making commentary, was like also sitting next to a group of other guys who were separate group that were also making commentary the whole time, but theirs were more like whistling in between and cheering, and like every time like Stevie did a trick or Stevie got some or whatever, they were like whistling and like into it. But then the two groups got mad at each other because I think, like, the one group that was whistling and cheering was more like they were just enjoying the movie, and then this other guy who had been, like, yelling, like, slurs and stuff throughout the movie was just being obnoxious. So one of them told the other to shut the fuck up, and then they got in each other's faces. And I was, like, outside complaining. I was, like, a little bit of a narc at this time. And I was outside complaining, like, this guy won't shut up. Like, he has not, like, stopped yelling, like, really offensive shit throughout this whole movie. It is, like, very disruptive. And as I'm, like, bringing the worker in to be like, it's that guy, this fight has broken out.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, oh, my God. And my roommates, I wasn't in there for the whole fight, but my roommates told me that what had happened was one of the guys said, shut the fuck up, to the guy who was just yelling, like, slurs and stuff. And then they got in each other's faces, and one of the guys at some point yelled, I'm gonna throw this fucking water bottle in your face. The other guy goes, I'm not even thirsty. And then they just started swinging.
Now that's a great line. That's a better line than anything that was written in mid-90s.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, it's kind of cool that, like, I think, like, of course, there should be a fight in the middle of a mid-90s screening.
Yes. From probably skater kids.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my God. That's honestly, that's one of the things I do miss about the movies is, like, I mean, you're in a group of people, the whole audience has to sort of come together, and sometimes there are moments like that where, like, some like righteous justice kind of comes down a little bit. Like, nobody should be having a fist fight in a movie theater, but at least the group of people who are just kind of really enjoying the movie and being loud, but still, like, whistling and cheering at shit, as opposed to the guys who are yelling and commenting and being obnoxious. they were the ones who got the beat down, you know? Like, if there's ever a place to be a narc, I would say it's at the movies where something like that is happening. Years ago, I saw Wreck-It Ralph at at the Grove, and there was a family in there who they were sitting in the very front, and it wasn't that long into the movie they started taking selfies with the flash on.
Oh my god!
And everybody started yelling at them, just like, turn your fucking phone off, stop taking fucking pictures. And it was just one of those great moments of everybody ganging up on the people who are ruining the experience for everybody else.
Well, multiple people in this fight that happened in mid-90s got in on the fight. So, like, then it started, like, people were going in to break up the fight. Some people were just swinging because they didn't know who was in the fight. And, like, one of my friends got punched in the face.
Oh, man.
Because he tried to, like, help one of the guys that was getting, like, pounded on. And the movie, they still continued the screening. Like, they didn't stop it and cancel it and tell everyone to go home. They just were like, we're going to continue the screening, and if anyone wants free tickets after, come get them.
Yeah, did they have? I would hope that they had somebody at the exit just handing out passes to anybody who would want them. Yeah.
Yeah, but I definitely, like, I always get nervous now when I'm at the theater. Well, you know, like, in the time that before the quarantine, like, just after that, because I was like, I really don't want to fight like that to break out again. But also, like, it was really satisfying that, like, the guy who had just been, like, yelling a bunch of stupid shit the whole time, like, got his justice, and then ended up leaving the theater. Like, he just ran off. So I guess I could have finished the rest of the movie because he wasn't there anymore. But I just was like,
but you would have had no context for this whole collection of vibes that also doesn't really have a whole lot of context. So what,
right.
You know, it was better off. As far as the movie itself goes, so this is the first time I'd watched it. I do remember 2018 being a year that was, like, really big for the coming of age. I completely forgot that this even came out in 2018 until we were talking about it now. And that, like, as far as movies of that year go, of the coming of age variety, I'm more of an 8th Grade than a Lady Bird. I loved 8th Grade, was not big on Lady Bird. And this, I feel like, was kind of somewhere in the middle. As far as, like, it felt very much like a Richard Linklater movie, but, you know, like, it's like the 90s version of Dazed and Confused is the biggest equation that I can have for that.
Right.
You know, because all the music is clearly super emblematic of the 90s, and it's following a young kid who starts hanging out with the big kids, and they show him what their lifestyle is like. But the script didn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was like them just kind of, I mean, I think a lot of it is like it's just them hanging out, which it's like sometimes they say funny shit or whatever, or it's kind of like, I guess that's how, like, young boys would have talked. Even, I mean, I guess now, I mean, I hope they wouldn't be saying, like, the F slur as nearly as much, and, like, the R word and stuff nearly as much as was happening in this movie. But it's like a lot of those moments where they're just hanging out, there were, like, one too many where I was like, this isn't, like, there was just so much I was so confused about with a lot of the characters and, like, their backstories, and also, like, why they were the way they were, besides just, like, they're being fucking assholes to each other.
Yeah. There was that's the kind of stuff that I wish I could have seen a little bit more about the characters' lives in a way that, even with Stevie, the lead, you see a little bit into his life, his home life, but it's not really anything that feels like it's super noteworthy. Right. You know, like, I was much more interested in the home life of Nakel Smith's character, Ray. I think Ruben also had some elements that, like, even though he was a huge he became a bigger piece of shit as the movie went on. He's a more compelling character than Stevie, who's just sort of this like, you know, he's a 12-year-old who's running around getting drunk and skating and injuring himself. And it just doesn't really, I don't know. I wish that it was less of a vibe and more of an actual, it feeling like more of a coming of age story.
Right. Yeah, I just feel like that was my issue too, is that like they have this moment in the movie that like really just, I feel like they had an opportunity to go completely different than they ended up going towards the last like 20 minutes of the movie, where like there's that kind of like Ray is the best part of the movie. And Ray like is like the like kind of just like they all look up to him, and he like kind of sits down with Stevie, and he's like basically like, dude, we all have shit in our closets, and like, you know, like he's just kind of trying to give him perspective, and then they go skating. He's like, let's just like chill out and let's go skating. And then I'm expecting like we see like we're like I'm expecting like okay, like Stevie's getting to be a better skater, and like he's like forming these like friendships, and he's like really getting to where he wants to be or whatever, growing. And then they cut to just like now Stevie is basically like fuck shit, where he's just getting drunk all the time and getting in fights. Which so I was like, oh my gosh, like it really, and then by the end, I don't feel like anything, I just was like, I didn't feel like there was anything, I don't even want to say learned, because after a while it did feel like a cautionary tale where they're like, just don't do anything or you're going to end up in a car accident. And then that's it. Like,
yeah, it's a little, it's got a little bit of that cautionary tale vibe to it also. Particularly with how you learn eventually that Ray looks at fuck shit, which is with a lot of concern, even though you don't see any of that concern really until like the last third of the movie. I think the other elements that I like, that I wish were played out more were, there are fun vignettes over the course of this movie. Like I think that the scene where they're all skating around and then the cops show up is a really fun scene. Where they're and not just the one with the big bust happens, but also where they're yelling at Gerard Carmichael from behind the fence. Great scene. The stuff with Ray and Stevie feels really, really good. Like that conversation that they have behind the skate shop is really nice. Even the little moment of like when Stevie falls off the roof. And Ray is the person who is the adult in the situation, and is like, yo, he's bleeding from the head. Like, take your shirt off. Take your fucking shirt off. Tie it around his head. And I wish that there was more, like, if it's a coming of age story, the stuff that I enjoy most in a coming of age movie is seeing more of a relationship between the person who's helping with the coming of age part, and not just watching somebody who is the subject of the coming of age movie fumbling around and figuring it out. Like, I feel like when there is somebody who is such a strong character, potentially like Ray, it just helps drive the movie forward more if Ray is a more important character. Right.
Well, they spend a lot of time on the relationship between Stevie and Ruben, I think, more than needed to be. Like, yeah. And it's just like, I think there's moments with like Ruben too, where, I mean, I even think like there's small, like not like moments where like we see Ruben like go up to his house and then immediately go like pretend to go home and then leave. Yeah. And I feel like those are like effective moments in this movie about like giving us like, somewhat of a backstory or whatever. But then, yeah, it's like they set up all these relationships that we're supposed to care about or that are supposed to be like important. But then it's like, then you have this relationship exactly between Stevie and Ray, and you're like, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like it was just a very, like, it was like such a mess to me. And Stevie, like, also, like, I know Stevie's brother like beats on him, but we're supposed to like accept that the reason that his brother's all like dispositioned and stuff is because their mom like fucked a lot.
Yeah.
Like
And
they
he had
have
to
a
hear
nice
the fuck
house.
noises?
Yeah, the fuck
That's
noises. Like their mom is so nice throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they have a nice house. And she's never complaining about money or like, I think I need to get a new job. She's just kind of like, I think, there's this guy that I'm interested in, but I hope he's not like the other guys. Or like Harmony Korine walks out of her room at some point.
Yeah, with like his pants pulling up and his shoes in his hand.
We're like,
The way you do
they were
after
doing
you
fuck
fuck.
noises. Yeah.
I heard noises. I think to that point too, I think that part of the problem, I also had a problem with that. And I think part of it is because Lucas Hedges is miscast in this movie. I don't think Lucas Hedges is the right person to be playing this role. Lucas Hedges is sort of like a hit or miss actor for me. Like sometimes he's perfectly cast and he fits the role really nicely and I love him. And sometimes he's playing sort of this kind of a role, which is just like weird, dour, talking in like a tone of voice where he's just kind of like down and monotone, and it's clearly not his real voice, and it just doesn't work. Like the closest I got to liking Lucas Hedges in this movie is when he starts crying in the kitchen after punching Stevie a bunch because he stole his orange juice. I like if you give a character a trait where one of their biggest traits is I love orange juice and I only drink orange juice, you could do so much better from an acting perspective and a writing perspective. But anyway.
I don't know. I mean, it also feels like, I don't know. Maybe I should have Googled or something Jonah Hill's like background, but he's been acting since he was very young. And I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like this also feels like a movie made by somebody who is not privy to a life like this, or like these dynamics. And maybe, I don't know. When I remember when this came out, like a lot of my guy friends were like, I liked it because I related to it. Like as when I was like my guy friends who were skaters or just like were like learning how to become men from other people and stuff.
Right.
But I just feel like the whole, I don't know. It just feels like really like thin portrayals of like race and poverty and like kind of, I don't know. I mean, it's just, I just don't understand what the movie was like. It didn't affect me beyond just like, oh, they're playing cool songs or this has a cool filter over it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
No, I think that's how I felt too. I was like, this is clearly a movie that wants to be bigger than it is. I think Jonah Hill has a good eye as a director and there's a lot of really cool shots, but like cool shots can't make a good movie happen all the time. Like if you're going to make a movie that's just vibes, there has to be more to it to make it feel, I guess, a little bit more unconventional. This is like conventional, but also downgraded, watered down from where it could have been. That's how I felt.
No, definitely. I mean, I think if we're like relating it to like a Vibes movie or something of like, I don't know, Back to Dazed and Confused, like they don't have this whole thing. We don't ever, like the movie never tells us we need to figure out why the characters are the way they are, like because they're like living this really tough life or they're like, so I feel like if I made this movie, but no, I feel like it's really fun when it's really great when we see them like skating and when we see them hanging out. It could be more like, I think I'd be more like down with the meaningless, just kind of them like fucking around. If it was like this movie was just about them like partying and doing stupid stuff, not like trying to do all that, but also have like setting up some serious stuff or some like hard hitting stuff, but not really like seeing it through or not really like developing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else would you, if you were to make this movie, what else would you change about it?
I would not have 30-year-old Alexa Demie having like preying on this 12-year-old that looks like 9.
That's a really good call.
I know she's playing a teenager, but it's just like, oh my God, I guess I was reading through Letterboxd after I watched this last night, rewatched this last night, and somebody was talking about like how in 8th grade there's that scene where Kayla is in the car with that high schooler and it's super uncomfortable. And in this movie, we're supposed to like cheer on this like encounter he has with Alexa Demie's, that Stevie has with Alexa Demie's character.
Yeah.
And I guess it's different because in this we're like, oh, he's like consenting and he's like in, but it is also like, it does, the power dynamics feel weird because after they hook up, he's like such a child, like the way he talks about it. And then she's talking to her friends and they're like, he's going to worship you for the rest of his life. Like you just made this like kid's life. Like, you know, it's like a power thing. And
yeah, it doesn't do, I think, especially now that you mentioned that 8th grade scene too, I think that part of why it works to have some, like a moment in that vein in 8th grade versus in mid-90s is like in 8th grade, it subverts what you would expect to happen and has her say no and get out of there. Right. And in mid-90s, you expect what happens to happen. Like, of course, the 12-year-old kid who doesn't know anything is going to follow the girl into the room and get statutory rape.
Yeah.
Is that the best way to put it? Probably not. But it's what goes on. Yeah, like it was so weird rewatching it, and I think because, you know, when I saw it in the theater, I didn't know who this actress was, and I also didn't. I just was like, I don't know. I was like, I wasn't paying that much attention, and I guess just like rewatching him, like he looks like such a child compared to her, like tiny, and I don't know. I was like, I don't know if they just needed like there had to be some sort of coming of age, like him becoming a man scene, and I don't know. I just feel like it could have been done different, or just like with another 13, 14-year-old. Yeah, and not
it didn't
somebody
have
who's
to be
clearly so much older.
Yeah, and I just feel like, I don't know, at first I was like, okay, maybe they didn't actually make out because a lot of this was in shadows. But then I'm like watching, I'm like, oh no, they're actually making out. Like, and it's so, it made me so uncomfortable. I was like, this is, I don't know. I mean, that's my other issue with this movie.
Yeah. I think there are ways, like in some of my favorite coming of age movies, this is a key element of those kinds of movies, right? Where there's like a scene that's like, there's always some sort of a person who the main character's pining after, or there's some sort of a relationship or a hookup or something. And it's done so much better in other movies, like Perks of Being a Wallflower, Moonrise Kingdom, Adventureland. Like all of these movies have that scene or that subplot happen in a much better way. And I think, again, what ties back to those movies compared to this is that the script for this movie is so bad and non-existent that it makes the rest of the movie suffer. If Jonah Hill wants to direct another movie, great. If he wants to, he's cast characters like this and cast actors and actors like this, great. He's doing a good job as a director, I think. But he should not be writing the script.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think it's just, I think that, like, yeah, that's the thing. The biggest thing was that I would have been totally fine with the whole pure vibes or whatever and all that, whatever. If the script was much better and, like, Jonah Hill, like, sweetie, like, ask for help if you need it. Like, it's okay.
It's okay.
I just, it was really tough to also, like, it just felt, I mean, I think also too is like a lot of it was pretty predictable, like was another thing. It's like, and also he writes so many, like, them saying words that I feel like they don't need to say, even if he thinks that's accurate to the time or how, like, young guys talk. But it's also like, I guess, okay, so those guys that were all cheering during all the guys who fought in the screening I saw, like they were laughing and repeating the like slurs that they were saying
Right.
on screen. So it's like, yeah, maybe there's going to be like a crowd that's like is like, you know, like that's just, he's trying to go for something, but obviously I'm not going to talk about it. But also, like, I'm not saying he has to condemn it on screen, but it's like, also, I don't think the movie would suffer if he didn't have them talking like that. They can say stupid shit, like that whole conversation they had about like, would you rather like eat your mom out or like go down
or
on
suck
your
your dad's dick? Yeah.
Like you can say that shit because it's like young boys are dumb and weird and say gross shit like that and love to gross each other out. But I think like you don't need to have like them saying like all these like slurs, and I don't think they needed to like the whole just like. I mean, yes, later he has this like kind of conversation where Ray's like saying thank you is not gay. Like,
yeah, that's the and that's the closest he gets to having a moment like that where it's like, yeah, this is obviously behavior that is bad and you should not model this behavior, young man, young boy. Yeah. But there's not enough of it, I think, for it to be like really necessary to the extent that it is.
Like, I don't know. I feel like even there could have been an offhand, like, I mean, Ray at some point is like, you know, kind of at random points is like, dude, what the fuck, when they like say certain things. Mm-hmm. But I just feel like, yeah, there was just when they were calling people like the F slur a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Like just everyone was just like.
Just in the first 15 minutes, just tons of it.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like. I don't know. Also, because part of it is like, you know, he's saying like Ruben's like, don't say thank you. Don't talk about this. Like, I don't want to talk to you about this, basically, is like the vibe he's giving. Because like guys don't want to get deep with each other is like kind of a common thing that has happened throughout history.
Right.
And I feel like then have more moments where they're just skating and not talking, or they're just smoking and they're all, you know, like,
yeah.
If you really want, not so much like them just mumbling and saying awful things and then just not, like, I don't know if it's supposed to be a slice of life thing where like, I'm not going to make any opinion about any of these characters or whatever, but like, you're not making a fucking documentary. Like,
and you're not making a skate movie either. Like, there's a genre that they could have done more to ape of the skate movie, which is a whole. I mean, they're watching skate movies in the shop. Fourth grade makes a skate movie basically at the very end of it, and that was what plays before the credits roll. And you know, it's a genre that's popular, and they could have done more of that element in the actual movie. But again, it's a choice that for whatever reason is not made and would have elevated this movie to have that unconventional aspect and not feel like a stock movie that also just happens to be well directed enough for you to be like, all right, this isn't total garbage, but it's got enough of. Yeah, I got complex feelings about this movie, Sarah. I'm not as far in the I hate it camp as you, but also like I definitely recognize there are problems with this movie that are so easily fixable that it's kind of blows my mind that the time was not taken to fix those things. That nobody told Jonah Hill, hey, maybe this is a direction to go in instead, and or that Jonah Hill didn't ask anybody for help.
Right.
Poor
they could
guy.
also cut like they could also cut like multiple shots in this movie. There's like, okay, just specifically, this is me getting nitpicky, and I don't know shit about filmmaking, but there's this part when after like Stevie is like all drunk and shit with fuck shit, and they're all just skating around in the like the where the like courthouse is. Ruben, I think we're supposed to think that Ruben's not really as tight with them anymore, and he's kind of glaring at Stevie across the way. And they show us this shot of him glaring like 3 times. And I'm like, see, there's just like so much of this that I feel like just feels like so much like a directorial debut where I'm like, somebody should have given you notes on that last draft, Jonah Hill. Like, who was editing this movie? Now I have an issue with the editor. But no, it frustrates me that if you have enough money, you can make a movie like this and just, I don't know. I mean, I just was really expecting a lot more. And I think also because, like, just real quick, I think I was like Jonah Hill has been such an inspiration as like another like plus size person in Hollywood who is like kind of being like, I'm a guy, but I've been treated like shit by reporters and just like so many people I've worked with.
Right.
And I don't think he needed to make a movie about like being a fat kid, but I just feel like I just was like, I know you have something to say, Jonah Hill, but this movie did not give me that at all. Like that, it just didn't move me, and it didn't feel like personal. I don't know. I mean,
it's not really.
Not everything has to be personal, because like 8th grade is like a child, like a teenage girl, and it's like a man directing it. But even that is so much better.
Yeah, I think that there's the element that like that somehow Bo Burnham was able to capture in 8th grade is not captured here. There's not as much of a reason to identify with the main character in this movie that you feel in 8th grade, or at least that I felt. Rather, I don't want to speak for you, but I think, it's just this movie's full of missed opportunities. This movie's sort of mid-90s, more like middle of the road. Am I right? Huh?
That's your Letterboxd review.
I mean, my Letterboxd review, probably 3.5 stars.
Whoa,
maybe 3. I don't really. I gotta sit and think on it a little bit more, because I did my flick chart of it, and it's right in the middle of my flick chart ratings. So probably somewhere in that realm.
2.5
What's your Letterboxd review?
2.5 for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And that was what it was when I first saw it too, because I looked back at what they rated it as originally, and I was like actually enjoying it a little more than I did the first time, because I think I was able to just like, I was like, I know what's going to happen, so I don't have a lot of expectations out of the second rewatch, and so I was able to enjoy a little more of it. But I still had the same problems that I had with it before, and I noticed a lot more than I did before, and so I was just like, oh my gosh. This would be cool to me if I was like a teenager watching it. I think if I was a teen and I had seen this, I'd be like, this is the shit.
Yeah.
Or if I was like somebody who just like didn't, this is gonna sound so pretentious, like didn't care about movies that much, but was like, oh, cool, escape movie. Like I'm gonna go, like that's why I'm interested in it. But also then, like, yeah, there's not as much skating as even me as somebody who's not in skate culture, like I would have liked. I don't know.
This is what it is. If I was the kid who was an 18-year-old me buying a pack of cigarettes for the first time and smoking a Marlboro Red in the parking lot with my on and off girlfriend of our high school, I would probably love this movie. But I'm a little older and a little wiser, and can see through the veneer here. Yeah, but even like my partner's like 14-year-old sister, I saw her Letterboxd rating on this, and I think she gave it like half a star. And so I was like, this is not fooling anybody. Well, it fooled some people. That's true. But hey, it is what it is. And at the end of the day, even though I am not a huge fan of this movie, it's pretty middle of the road, but I did appreciate that you brought it to my attention today, Sarah. So thank you for that. Yeah. Where can the listeners find you? Obviously, Oughts to Be Queer, your podcast with Jaime. Go check that out. Yes. But where can they see on the social medias and such? You can see me at Carrot Flaver, 2 V's instead of a W. I don't know. I'll be like tagged in this, so I think you guys can figure it out. But yes. On everything, on all platforms. Also, every few months with pageant comedy, it's sketch team I'm on. It's a bunch of queer and POC people. So you can find my work there. Cool. Go check all that out. And anytime Sarah's on Power Selling, it's a very fun watch. So go check out some of I think most of the episodes that you've been in are on the YouTube channel. So go check those out. You can find me at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram, jlightcomedy.com for show dates, both live and live streamed. If you like the podcast, tell a friend and consider subscribing to the Patreon where you get weekly bonus episodes. And that's it. Sarah, thanks again.
Thank you for having me. This was really, I love talking about shit I hate.
Me too. That's why this is a great podcast.
Yeah.
This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.